The Houston Rockets are another team in the heat of the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, and I'm just going to breeze through the season preview portion here so that I can discuss the future of this franchise because it's going to be another forgettable season for this team. At 23 and a half wins, it seems like a fairly low win total. And if you're betting with a handful of really talented young players, you might be tempted to take the over. However, if it were me, I would still take the under. This team won just 20 games last season. And at least in terms of proven players in the league, they took a step back this year, trading away Christian Wood, which is totally fine. I mentioned in the Detroit preview, this is a really great year to be a bad team. But I do think, in terms of the teams that are actively tanking to get Wembanyama, I feel the worst or maybe the most uncertain about where the Rockets are headed. Of the five teams with the lowest win projection for next season, so out of the Pacers, the Magic, the Thunder, and the Spurs, obviously also the Rockets, I feel like they're the furthest behind. Besides maybe the Spurs, I know they really just kicked off their rebuild this offseason, so it's understandable that they would be pretty far behind. And in hearing me say that, you might think that I'm pretty down on the Rockets from a talent perspective, like they're devoid of any young talent, but that's not the way I feel at all. It's actually quite the opposite. I really like a lot of the young pieces on this team as individuals. My questions or hesitancy to really embrace the future of this team has more to do with the way that those pieces fit together. And some of the decisions that the team has made in the past are going to start haunting them soon. And if you start to imagine a team as like putting together a puzzle, you have the image on the box, and that represents the goal of winning a championship. And with a puzzle, there's border pieces and pieces that make up the backgrounds. Those represent kind of your role players. And then the fun pieces that make up like the actual image that you're trying to recreate, that represents your franchise cornerstones. All of the pieces have to fit together. Otherwise, it won't look like the picture on the box. And it feels like the Rockets are putting together the actual image portion of the puzzle, but they didn't like any of the blue background pieces. So they just decided to grab some other puzzle pieces from another puzzle, and they're trying to mix those in with the actual puzzle with no plan of how this is all going to fit together. And that's pretty much exactly how I feel about the current state of the Rockets. And pretty much from top to bottom, whether I'm looking at how the backcourt fits together, how the front court fits together, or how the front court and the backcourt kind of mesh together, nothing here complements one another. And not only do they not complement one another, it seems like they're more of a detriment to each other than anything. Starting out in the backcourt, there's Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green, neither of whom are point guards and neither of whom have really shown any aptitude for playmaking as far as setting up teammates goes. Too many times with both of those guys in the game together, it just evolves into this your turn, my turn, ISO style offense. And that isn't to say that they can't develop some playmaking skills over time. It just seems that they're destined to me to be these score first guards above all else. And even with some improvements playmaking wise, I doubt it will ever be enough for both of them to truly flourish as a backcourt. Now, the Rockets did draft Ty Ty Washington, a rookie point guard out of Kentucky, and he's more of a traditional point guard. If he can slide into the starting lineup at some point and take on that facilitation role where maybe like Kevin Porter Jr. moves over to the bench as the high volume shooter to carry the second unit, and we only get these short spurts of Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green together rather than having that as a main staple of the team philosophy, then I'm totally fine with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I don't know how much I really want to bank on a late first round pick being the glue that holds my team together. So if the plan is that Porter Jr. and Jalen Green are going to be the starting backcourt of the future, that's a really lousy plan. Front court wise, I love Alfred Şengün and I love Jabari Smith Jr., but I don't like the fit, at least defensively. Şengün is a really nice low post scorer who has a pretty nice playmaking feel, sort of a poor man's Jokic, well, more like a homeless version of Jokic, but that's still a really good player. And with Jabari Smith Jr. able to space the floor as a lethal 3-point shooter at that four spot, Şengün will have more room to operate in the post than he's likely had in his entire life. Jabari Smith is also a really a depth finisher in the mid range and around the basket. So I could see Şengün setting him up for some really nice baskets. I think of Jabari Smith sort of like a Mike Allstott or just a red zone power running back, someone who can't really play every down and move you up and down the football field, but can come in during your red zone drives and finish off the possession. That's sort of who Jabari Smith is as a basketball player. I don't think you can run your entire offense through him because he really can't create for himself and others, but he's going to be elite at finishing off a possession either with a catch and shoot or a 1 to 2 dribble move to the mid range or to the basket. Defensively is where the issues come in with Jabari Smith as a defender. He can pretty much switch 1 through 4. However, he's just not a great shot blocker or a low post defender or rim protector. And Şengün is just an outright liability defensively. So where are the Rockets going to get that rim protection from? As of now, there really isn't anyone on the roster that you fear on this Rockets team as an opponent attacking the basket. And that's going to prevent this Rockets group from really ever being elite on the defensive end if they just never address that. Fit wise between the front court and the back court, oh boy, where do I even get started? Well, defensively, as I mentioned, they don't really have any rim protection. And at least thus far, both Green and Kevin Porter Jr. seem pretty uninterested in defense. So that could be disastrous. And to be fair, it's not uncommon for young players to act too cool or just be disinterested on that side of the ball. And at least for Jalen Green, he absolutely has all of the tools to be a good defensive player. But I've seen too many players over the years with all of the tools to be good defensively, and they just never figure it out. So I'll believe it when I see it with either of them. Secondly, I mentioned earlier how Jabari Smith Jr. is a player who really needs to have his scoring opportunities set up for him. And as of now, Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green just aren't the players for the job. At Auburn, Smith played with some guards who had the same gunner type mentality as Green and Kevin Porter Jr., and at times that looked really rough. So that's something to keep an eye out for. The roster fit paired with the timetable that this team needs to be on is what has me most concerned about the future of this franchise. They can't afford to be as patient as Oklahoma City or Orlando because after this upcoming draft, they're going to owe Oklahoma City their first round pick in 24 and 26. Now, granted, they're top 4 protected, so with some luck, they can hold on to those picks. But if I'm the Rockets, I don't know if I want to roll the dice on that. Detroit was a team that fell out to 5 this past season after having one of the worst records in the league, so it can happen. It's sort of a weird spot because you might not be ready to compete or push for a play-in starting next season, but if you continue to commit to sucking and have bad luck in the lottery, it was all for nothing. So I guess if I were the Rockets GM, I would just go all in on development this season and getting Wembanyama, but pay close attention to how the pieces are fitting together. Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. are the future of this team, so I have to start really looking into what is going to be best for them moving forward. I'm taking anyone who doesn't complement them skill set wise, and I'm going to move off of them and then use the insane amount of cap room that they're going to have next offseason to bring in some younger restricted and unrestricted free agents that can continue to grow with this young team. And then hopefully we're in the mix for a play in the following season, primed to take a huge leap forward 2 years from now. If you're a Rockets fan, though, buckle up for another rough year and pray for good luck with the ping pong balls at the end of the year.